So, Eric, you had some things you wanted to talk about today. Why don't you kick it off and let's start the conversation? A lot of stuff to talk about.
Well, we don't ever do anything in any exact order, but why don't we start off
No,
with winners and
that would mess us up if we tried that.
yeah, that's true. We get confused. Let's start with winners and losers this week. What do you got for winners?
Oh, clearly, Iran is a huge winner, and so is the Russian Republic, or whatever you want to call them. So the United States has up to now, all through the Cold War, and has reserved the right to go into the Black Sea. It's called freedom of navigation exercises. And Biden is the first United States president since Jimmy Carter to shy away from it. And the Russians told us we could no longer go in the Black Sea, and the American Navy is no longer going into the Black Sea. It's because of what's going on in Ukraine. Now, these are distant issues, but what's happening is the level of contempt that the Russians, Chinese, and Iranians have for us is extremely dangerous because it's going to lead to a sneak attack against the United States. We can talk about that later, but that's the big winner. And as with regard to Iran, Iran is back to challenging our ships again and attacking our ships. Now, under Obama, you might remember that one of our frigates got captured by the Iranians, and then they made our soldiers stand with their arms up as captured, and then Trump put an end to that and told our troops if their little boats get too close to our ships to just blow them out of the water, and they immediately stopped. Well, they've gone back to that now. They've gone back to attacking and harassing our boats, and this is in international waters. These are waterways where oil and a lot of other goods and services transit. So this is a freedom of navigation thing. Both the Iranians and the Russians have basically forced the Biden administration to blink, and it's going to lead to escalation by them. They now know that they can push us around. These are little things, but from little things come the outcome of the foreign policy now. Plus, we've alienated Israel, our natural ally, and we've given up energy independence, which is going to power the Russian war machine as well as the Iranian terrorist networks, because the fuel prices are already going up in the United States because we're squandering before our very eyes our energy independence. This is great news for our enemies, bad news for Americans, especially families who are going to be paying more at the gas pump. And their children are going to be dragged into more Middle East wars because now we have to kiss their ass, where we didn't have to kiss their ass before. Now we're going to need to kiss their ass to get the oil. We're not going to be able, they're going to walk all over us, and we're going to be the Mr. Bill of the Middle East again.
Yeah, and hey, lucky for Iran, we got John Kerry up there again, so he can share military secrets with them and give them secrets of Israel.
What happened to the Logan Act? Wow.
Yeah.
They certainly were big on enforcing that, and here he is. He's been cahootinizing with the Ayatollah, for God's sake, again. So I wonder how much money they're going to give to the Ayatollah this time. Yeah. These guys don't understand that these things create wars. We can't be the world's policeman, but when you show weakness, sadly, there's some regimes that regard weakness as provocative to some people. Not to you and me, like irrational people. We appreciate people who stand down and don't look for trouble, but the world global neighborhood's akin to a prison. Akin to a prison culture, i.e., that where you show weakness actually invites violence. Where you do not show weakness deters violence. It's a prison culture, and you got to treat it as such. It's the global neighborhood's tough turf.
Awesome. My winner of the week was actually the red states. You saw where they finally, it's taken them a long time. Of course, they blame COVID. Everybody blames COVID for everything.
I love blaming COVID. Don't you love blaming COVID?
Oh yeah, but it's everything. But they did. They finished up the 2020 census, and actually the electoral college seats were changed. Blue states are hemorrhaging people, which we've known. I mean, it's why the property values are going crazy in the South, and people are leaving. But the good news is we picked up, Republicans picked up 7 electoral college seats, 2 in Texas, 1 in Florida, 1 in North Carolina, 1 in Oregon, 1 in Colorado, and 1 in Montana. With it, Florida, North Carolina, Oregon, Montana, and Colorado picked up 1 each, and Texas was 2. On the opposite side, blue states, California, Illinois, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia all lost a seat. So just with the electoral college, the way it was, laid out, Democrats lost six seats and Republicans gained 7. When you're looking at the 2020, not to 2024, but when you look at the election we just had with Trump and Biden, if this was in place, in fact, it comes in place next election cycle, 2024. But if this was in place, Trump would have picked up three more electoral college votes, and Biden would have lost 3 electoral college votes. The way that, if everybody voted exactly the same, not a lot there. But I was listening to somebody else talking about it a couple days ago, and they actually pointed when the last election that Bush won, and the difference there was huge. Bush would have had 18 more electoral college votes, would have been huge.
And remember that the observation you had a couple of meetings back where Schumer was running his mouth about how Puerto Rico is going to become the 52nd state after the District of Columbia, and when the Democrats looked at the numbers on how well President Trump did, how popular President Trump is with Hispanics, they dropped that like a hot rock, I think is how we described it. So their actions tell us a lot. It's scaring them. These are good events. They've got big problems under the surface, that's for sure. And I've seen even more polling showing that Biden's support. You were right when you brought this up last time. Biden's support is really, really soft. He's got, it's a nothing burger. I wonder if he's going to get a bump from his State of the Union address. I don't know, but I doubt it.
I heard something on that today. It's either CNN or CBS put a poll out, and they're saying, wow, it was like a huge win for Biden, 85% support. But they said they don't know where anybody's getting those numbers from, because when you go to social media, when you go to Twitter, when you go to Facebook, when you went to YouTube and all the other places as the actual State of the Union was being accomplished, I mean, people did nothing but berate how bad it was, and how much in disagreement they were. So, I think a lot of it is, we've definitely got a couple tough 2 to 4 years that we got to face here. But, in a lot of reality, the way I look at it, the sooner and faster and more extreme they get, the better it is for our side, because it's making people realize we don't want this.
Plus he's pissing away political capital on crap like global warming and not getting anywhere. The Chinese are not going to reciprocate. He's wasting political capital on junk like that, and not putting it into making the district the 51st state, and not putting it into HR1. Thank God, because those are very bad. Those would be very bad news if somehow they were able to pass them.
Right.
So that's important.
Good insight. So losers, who do you got?
Well, I mentioned a few of them. It's going to be the middle class families who are going to be paying more for fuel, and you're already seeing more signs of inflation. Even the government's rigged system is admitting there's a 0.06% increase. And it's the biggest one since 2012. But obviously, with lumber up 117%, and copper, and all of the other commodities, and I'm reading the New York Times now. They're saying, oh well, this is all the pent up demand, and they're already rolling out all the excuses. And by the way, there's a new thing, and you're going to need to interview me about this, but this is monetary policy, so I don't want to put you to sleep. It's just that they now have made a big change in how the government is funded, and it's completely insane. It's a cockeyed academic theory that's been implemented, and there's no experts on it nationally because it's an academic thought experiment that has just quietly been turned into an emergency government funding measure. It's called Modern Monetary um,
Theory.
Theory,
Yeah.
MMT. And the basic idea is they've merged the Federal Reserve effectively with the Treasury Department. That's why Janet Yellen she was the head of the Fed, and she's been moved into the Secretary of the Treasury, where they, in the past, they would simply give banks money for making low interest below market rate loans, and they would inject fake money into the economy that way. What they're doing now is they're literally creating money and directly paying bills with that. And so what they're doing is it's a closed system of money. It's kind of like issuing mall money. So like a mall would issue mall money, and you can only redeem it at the mall, right? At the stores and services offered by the mall. And so what this is going to do is they're going to be, and I'm making a prediction in my newsletter, that cryptocurrencies are going to be co-opted and destroyed by the regulators. The cryptocurrencies are very, very popular for good reason, because it's an awesome way to hide money. It's an awesome way to spend money. And the government is not going to allow cryptocurrencies to be an escape hatch from this MMT dollar that's being created. So I'll get more into that. I want to explain it in a way that can make sense to people. But suffice it to say, we're now directly creating money and directly funding things. That's why they're getting away with all these trillions of dollars of spending. They're just conjuring it up. And it's for the first time ever, they're directly conjuring up money that's directly being spent. Before, it was an indirect process with a little bit of control. And no damn buddy knows exactly how this is going to turn out, including me, because there are no experts, because this is an academic theory. They just, under COVID emergency funding, they put it in place. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's going
Well,
to be,
well, what you're talking about is what goes hand in hand with Biden's State of the Union last night. The programs that he proposed are an increase of $5 trillion into our national debt, which is on top of the $4 trillion that we
but
spent.
see, with MMT dollars, they can pay off all the debt directly. And so they
Yeah.
don't even need to worry about the bond market anymore. The problem is that they have to close off all the escape hatches that where people are going to flee. They're going to try to cut them off. That's why cryptocurrency is doomed, because this MMT system is not going to, people are not going to be able to they can't allow people to escape from the MMT dollar. In order for it to work, they have to be able to pay all the debt with dollars they create, and it's going to be where we can't have outside trade or outside lenders anymore. It's going to be direct funding by Uncle Sam. So they're going to have to constrain our buying freedoms big time. They're going to have to do a cryptocurrency, but they're either going to co-opt the cryptocurrencies or they're going to create their own. So a universal digital dollar is going to have to happen very soon. And that's what my big prediction for next time. We can go through that issue, but it's such a complicated damn thing. I don't want to.
Well, I'm glad you're holding off, and because you said you weren't going to go into it,
And I did anyway. I can't help
so that
it.
we wouldn't fall asleep, because I fell asleep. I don't know how many times last night with other millions of Americans listening to Biden. So I
But not
appreciate
with Mr.
that.
Tim.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that. So that's your loser, my loser. My biggest loser is Hollywood. Definitely the biggest loser with the Oscars. I mean, they had the worst ratings ever. They can keep going woke, go broke. Their ratings were down 58% compared to 2020. That's on top of them being down 20% last year. They literally had under 10 million viewers. Compared
they're
to
going to get the message. They were over 50 million before.
Oh, well, yeah, they had 20 million last year, 30 million in 2018. And maybe they're finally going to get the message that we really don't care what their opinion is. But I've watched some of the videos on things that people were saying, and it was just like, it was ridiculous. But so that was my loser. And let's move on. Let's maybe go to a question. You were telling me the other day, about the significant development between Russia and China. So why don't you kind of, illuminate on that? And
Well,
I'm ready to listen.
so right now, the Chinese have just launched the first segment of their of their space station, and it looks like they're going to arm it with a laser, that is, the technology is there for us and for them, but it's supposedly to help them clear out debris, that is in orbit, and it does pose a hazard to other satellites and spacecraft and so forth. But it can also be used to blind satellites. And there's been a major. The United States is extremely vulnerable right now. We've got our satellite, our GPS, and all of our satellites can easily be blinded right now. And I believe that Russia has signed a new alliance. I mean, actually, it's China and Iran have signed a new alliance. Now, these powers actually have the military capability, if they were focused, to actually defeat the United States. And the scenario that I see is all three of them will make major land grabs. The Russians more into the Ukraine. Further into the Ukraine, they're already fighting that war, and Taiwan, and the Iranians are probably going to take some land of their own. And I believe what might happen is a simultaneous attack on our satellites, particularly our aging GPS and communication satellites, because they've got the infrastructure to take them out now. And then you could couple that with an EMP hit on the United States. All the pillars of our civilizational ecosystem are completely artificial. They have not been tested by time. They've been developed over a relatively short amount of time. Everybody's familiar with how disruptive all the new technology is, and there's really no one person that actually designed the system. Mother Nature didn't design it. This is just conglomerations of technological advances that have been put together, and are untested by time. And they have not had time to develop. And it's kind of like why are people getting diabetes? It's because all the consequences of the artificial, commercially processed foods. Your body's simply not designed for it. But the ecosystem that we depend on provides us our ATM cash and our gasoline. And what's happened is that people have become so psychologically helpless and dependent because of the internet. There's a really great French study that you'll never hear about how it actually makes people dumber. The internet has made people dumber and less capable of. And the other piece of it is that there are no losers in school, and there are no more standards, and everything has been made ultra safe that nobody learns from their mistakes when they're growing up. And so they're mental midgets. They're not capable of handling the kind of stress. And I think the other thing we're looking at now is a sneak attack, with China. I believe it would be China, Iran, and Russia, because if they hit us with an EMP, we're going to lose all of our civilizational attributes. We have a really crappy power grid. It's extremely vulnerable. They've taken it green before they were ready. The new infrastructure deal is going to involve rationing with the smart meters, because they're getting rid of regular electricity generation, and we're going to be using more and more wind power. We saw how well that worked last winter in Texas. And it's just not going to work for a modern industry. They're going to have to ration. So uh, we are vulnerable to an EMP attack that could be done in concert with an attack on our aging satellite systems. And they could do a power grab. They could do a military land grab, all three at the same time. They could couple it with an EMP attack. They could couple it, and it would be sufficient. It would be sufficient to bring us to our knees. It would be. We would really not be able. I mean, we could retaliate with nuclear weapons, and that would, because those are hardened facilities, as I understand it. But pretty much everything else, I mean, we would have a terrible time. The food distribution network would collapse. It's a dangerous situation, and the problem is that Joe Biden. That's why I was saying to you last week, we're better off if he swears in Kamala because we need somebody that's coherent. This guy is provocative because he is obviously he's a puppet. He's a mannequin. He's an empty suit. I mean, I'm saying this about the president, and for this I apologize, but we have to look at this the way the Russians and the Chinese are going to look at it. And we are leaderless right now. We do not have a leader. Even a bad leader is better than a leader that is completely paralyzed, and he's got all these minions who have no real authority, that nobody elected them. We don't know who the hell they are. How are they going to rally the nation and address the nation? I'm sure the Chinese and the Russians, they're already moving on Hong Kong. They moved on Hong Kong, and they're now they're not facing any consequences from the United States. And so I think that we're looking at a real serious situation, because they have a window of 4 years. So the potential for a sneak attack is extremely high. It may not happen in the next year or two, but it's the elements are in place, and the level of contempt by these parties is extremely high. And contempt is when you see contempt, when you see the body language of contempt in foreign policy, it almost always foreshadows some kind of an attack. And I think we're going to see it. We're going to see it.
Wow, it's awesome. I don't want to say it's an awesome prediction, but it's it's definitely not good news. But it's
Well, I mean,
great insight.
I know that Biden is supposedly continuing to fund the Space Force, but I think it's more dangerous that he's letting the Russians keep us out of the Black Sea. That's a sign of will right there. They blinked. Bottom line is they blinked, and the Iranians are back out with their boats harassing our warships, and we don't have the guts to blow them out of the water. And Trump said we're going to blow them out of the water if they come too close. To your discretion. And apparently those instructions have been rescinded, and so we're back to. But I'm not worried about Iran, or I'm not worried about China taking over the world, or Russia taking over the world, or Iran taking over the world. But what I am worried about is I think they might be tempted to do a strike on us, because I think that we look extremely vulnerable. I mean, one of the reasons Hitler declared war against us is because in 1933 we had this War of the Worlds broadcast, and you had all these country crazies out there with pitchforks killing their neighbors they wanted to settle scores with, thinking that the aliens had invaded. And Hitler saw this and said, the Americans are a mongrel, stupid race. And he felt safe to, declare war when he just joined Japan. And he was in a two-front war with Russia, but he had such contempt for the United States, he felt it was safe to attack us as a mongrel species. So, again, the crazy people, the people who start the wars are the political yahoos who miscalculate our actual weaknesses. But we are vulnerable. If you take out our satellites, and I think they can take them out. I mean, their ASAT capabilities. I'll write all about it. You can count on it in a future edition. I'll talk about the military scenarios I see right now.
Yeah, well, you talked about what Hitler was thought about us. What do you think Putin was thinking last night when he was watching Biden as the leader of the free world, as he talked about how we're gonna do better than build back better. We're gonna build back better. I mean,
Well, I mean, and the Russians are going to be. I mean, the Russians by themselves and the Chinese by themselves. That's one thing, but them together, not so good for us.
no,
Because our nuclear retaliatory system, even though we could mess them up real bad, those two countries together could nuke us just as bad. So we would not have a nuclear option. And frankly, I think that these attacks would be anonymous. I think they might be able to pull it off in such a way that we wouldn't even know who the attacker was. All they would have are millions of Americans dying because we can't get water, because we can't get groceries, and we don't have a backup plan. So, and I made a prediction like this before in 1998, 3 years before 9/11. It's just I looked at the possibilities, and I said this is the potential. In intelligence work, you look at the potential of a. You've done intelligence work, and you look at the capabilities of an adversary that they're building, and those are indications to you of what their intentions are. It's kind of like if I was your neighbor and I was putting up a howitzer in my front yard, and it was like really range of fire would be mostly your house. And I told you that I had it there to make the birds happy so they could roost on it. Um, you're still going to look at that howitzer and all the ammo I've got. And, you're going to say, this is a capability that I'm not sure I want my neighbor to really have.
Yeah.
And look at the capabilities, and you don't have to spend a lot of time. Look at the capabilities that the country builds, and clearly they are gearing especially Russia and China, with sneak attack type technologies, um, because well, all they need is denial capability. Um, so that means that basically, if they can deny us access to all of our technology in the sky, they don't have to have a superior military. It's we're the ones who are vulnerable because we depend on that stuff so heavily, and because we're so advanced.
Yeah, speaking of Biden, last night, for those of you that picked him up in the State of the Union and happened to be able to stay awake, it was the longest first year State of the Union in the history.
Mm.
62 minutes of Weekend at Bernie's. I mean, and I know
Yeah,
we
but
talked.
Weekend at Bernie's was funny though. That was not
Yeah,
funny. There was nothing funny about that.
yeah, but at the end of the day, he's not the moderate that he ran on. And what people try to make him out is, if anything, you could call it moderate radicalism.
Do you
Um,
really think he's making those decisions? I don't think he's making any decisions.
no, I don't really
He's
think
got
he
all
is.
these. He's got all these hidden faces
Yeah.
behind him.
Oh yeah, no
And the
doubt about
Russia, and when those bastards look, if we get attacked, who's gonna? Those people don't have any national command authority. They're just there. They're hiding behind the curtain because they got the U.S. media. But if we're in a real slugfest, we're not going to have a commander in chief.
it. Yeah, yeah. And last night though, I definitely don't think Biden did himself any favors. He did with the left, of course, but there was actually two winners last night. One was whoever was able to give him enough Adderall that he was able to at least stay awake for 62 minutes and stay coherent. It's pretty good. He did have some mess ups. He had some mistakes, but at the end of the day, he did 62 minutes, longest in history. Never would have thought that. But the one I want to really point out is our senator from the great state of South Carolina, which we're from, Tim Scott.
Tim
He did
Scott, yes.
yeah, he did the rebuttal speech, and they always say those are not what you want to do. Usually, the rebuttal speech, you get picked to do it. It's they never really hit home runs. As far as the message goes, or even for the person that does it. But last night, I think he hit a grand slam, not just a home run.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and what I would say, what we really watched last night was the real story was Uncle Tim versus Uncle Joe. We always want to call
That's
him
right.
Uncle Joe, but unfortunately, Tim Scott, a great senator of South Carolina, because of what he ended up saying in his rebuttal speech, it went viral all over Twitter, all over social media, calling him Uncle Tim. The acronym for Uncle Tom. Definitely racist. It's kind of interesting how Twitter, Facebook, all of these social media platforms are quick to stop anything that's controversial or racist or on the right. But meanwhile, this was blatantly racist. But just wanted to go just a little bit, a couple things that he said, but he totally refuted Biden's COVID response, his infrastructure plan, which only 6% is going to go for bridges, roads, and airports. He refuted his border policy. He even brought up that the Biden administration's looking at having a taxpayer-funded abortion. Is packing the court, but his big win. Granted, for those of you who don't know Tim Scott, if you didn't happen to see it, he's the only Black Republican senator. But but here was this successful black person, senator for South Carolina, and basically he hit a home run on the racism, and that's why Twitter and everybody, kind of went berserk. But basically, what he said, which was pretty phenomenal. This is just a little summary. He said, "America is not a racist country. Period." You know, he said, and he had talked and gave his story coming from poverty, and all the things he affected, that he experienced and everything. He said, and it's wrong to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination, which is exactly what the left is doing. At the end, if there's anything else, his conclusion, it was packed full of meat. It was really, and I don't even mean red meat. I'm just talking packed full of just sound policy decisions and logic. But at the end was really powerful because he said that, here's what he said. He said it was totally opposite of Biden. If you listen to Biden, just like Putin and them, they're looking at him saying, my gosh, I mean, the president of the United States thinks we're a terrible country, that we don't have a chance. We're racist. We're all these things. Tim Scott said, we get to live in the greatest country on earth. He said, the country where my grandfather in his 94 years saw his family in one lifetime go from cotton to Congress. And then he went on to say, our best future won't come from Washington's schemes or their socialist dreams. He said, it'll come from you, the American people. And then he listed us all, whether we're Black, Hispanic, Republican, conservative, transgender, whatever. He listed it all. And he even had in there, which is a dirty word, he even listed the police. But he said, basically America is made up of that. That's what we are. And really what's awesome about that is because what we've got going on, there's no doubt in our country, in our culture at this time in history, there's a shift going on, and the left is choosing ethnocentric means to change it. They're basing it on identity, on race, on, money, economics, all of that, and trying to divide us. But then the other side is called civic. It's the civic. Gosh, I can't remember the whole name. Do you remember it? Civic nationalism. Civic nationalism.
And I'd heard that phrase, but I like it.
And that's really what this is, which is what Trump started. And what Trump believe in, it's the country, it's our culture, our traditions, it's our customs. That's where we unite. It doesn't matter that we're Black. It doesn't matter that we're white. It doesn't matter that we're female. It doesn't matter that we're transgender. It doesn't matter any of those things. That's not how you unite a country. It's through civic nationalism. And that's really what Tim Scott was pointing to, that we're all together. We're going to accomplish this. And it's going to be great days ahead for America. So I'm just glad to have him as a senator. And, it's great to hear him take the opportunity to stand up and really say what he said. And of course, he's taking a beating right now, but that's okay. He said it anyway. And that's really what all of us have to do.
I didn't get a chance to catch his speech, so I will definitely watch it.
Awesome. I listened to most of it on YouTube, but it's really good to download his transcript. Tim Scott transcript does a great job.
Good. Well, Eric, awesome. Are there? We're running out of time. Let's just say, is there anything else? I got
one more for you if you got time.
Yes, let's do it.
I guess the last one is, and I guess maybe you did cover it a little bit because I know that you've got some theories on a satellite sneak attack. So you kind of covered it a little bit, but the interesting part is, you were telling me the other day how that plays into how also you predicted what was going to happen at 9/11. Can you shed some light on that possibly?
So in 9/11, there was really making good predictions is about paying attention to capabilities, and there's really no special magic to it. But I was so alarmed in 1998 because bin Laden, it was clear that, he had attacked the World Trade Center. His people had attacked the World Trade Center. They always come back. And this was a terrorist who, he had attacked the coal, and there was a steady escalation. And I felt that we were going to be attacked with a nuclear device. And Bill Clinton, he did a big. He went into 3 countries with a launch, but it looked like, because he was having trouble with Monica Lewinsky, he did this. They would call the Monica missiles, and they missed Bin Laden by a country mile. And that's when I started realizing. I said, next step is a nuclear bomb, and it's going to go off in a U.S. city. And I wrote this. I was so disturbed by it in '98 that I put it on the front page of my newsletter. By the way, my newsletter was then called the American Sentinel. I've been publishing continuously since 1988, but back then it was the American Sentinel, and I commissioned a drawing of the World Trade Center being destroyed in New York City. And about 3 years later, when 9/11 happened, I was probably the only person in the United States who was actually relieved that it was merely a conventional attack. They would only kill 20 or 30,000, I thought, at the time when I saw the buildings fall. And fortunately, it was a lot less than that. But I thought it was going to be an A-bomb attack. So, but I put it on the front page of my newsletter. And when I originally put it up there, people thought I was a crank. They said, "Man, there's no way they're going to attack the World Trade Center." I said, no, this guy's been escalating steadily, steady escalation. That's what people with contempt do, steady escalation. And that's the body language for an attack. And it ultimately did happen. So, you know, um, people say, "Oh, well, wow, that's really cool that you figured this out." And I said, "Well, just all the information was there. It was all there. It was just a matter of the how and when." And at this point, I think that Russia and China and Iran together, if they act in unison to grab a bunch of territories in their respective regions, and all of a sudden our satellites are blinded, and there's an EMP there's a coupled with an EMP, we would not be able to retaliate against them on a nuclear level, because Russia and China have sufficient nuclear forces to wipe us out, and we simply wouldn't have the ability. And you would end up with Biden in there, unable, in the critical moments, unable to really function. You're talking about a bunch of people that are using this president as a puppet, whose faces we don't know, who nobody elected. And nobody elected these people. We don't even know who the hell they are. But somebody smart is driving that administration that understands leftist policy.
Yeah.
And so I don't think Biden is really running the show. We'd be better off with Kamala, because at least she's if she was smart enough to listen to the Pentagon people, they might be able to give her some guidance. But I don't have confidence that President Biden can do that. At least with President Trump, let's just say, oh, he's a preening egotist. I said, yeah, but he isn't going to let the Iranians make him look bad by holding his troops in humiliating our troops in public. They know better than to do that, because if nothing else, his ego would demand. He doesn't like those bad appearances, and I think the Russians know that, and I think the Chinese knew that. And I think that they did a lot. They respected him, but they didn't care for him all that much. But they have much more contempt for Biden. The Black Sea thing is really a big deal to the Russians. That's a blink, baby. That is a blink. And I think there's more of them coming out. So we'll see. But
Awesome.
under the right conditions, I could see all three powers making moves. And and we wouldn't even know. And I think they could covertly launch an EMP. We wouldn't know which power did it. But even if we did know which power, China and Russia together could destroy enough of the United States to make a nuclear retaliatory strike impractical. So that's my belief. The preconditions are there, and the Pearl Harbor. You look at the contempt that the Japanese had for us, and they thought we were stupid and weak and a divided country, and their perception and their warlords made a very bad decision, even though Yamamoto knew that was a big mistake, that the Americans would in fact unify and regroup and crush Japan. He knew that, but but that didn't help Japan because when they made the attack, they were just, but political dipshits make these mistakes when they're in power, and that makes them dangerous. So more
Well,
on that. I'll have more on my story about that.
that's just such a great way to end the week.
Yeah, sorry guys, what a downer I am. I can't
Yeah.
help it, but I think your news is actually pretty good. I think that the country is revitalizing, and perhaps, and remember that the law of unintended consequences is always there. You just don't know. I'm just saying the potential is high for that type of an attack, and it's the perfect time to do it. Sometime in the next year or two.
Yeah, in a way, we're kind of like good cop, bad cop.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
news, bad news.
yeah. You're all the good news, and I'm Mr. Gloom and Doom.
Hey, that'll be the first time anybody ever said I was good news. But
Me
hey,
included. I mean,
but hey, next to you, maybe I am. I'll take it.
oh yeah, Mister
Yeah,
You. Yeah,
I'll
no,
take
that's
it.
okay. You're okay, man. You're. I think that people appreciate, and as do I, all the. You're really really great. I'm more of the historian type. And you're much more the you're so on top of all these great new conservatives who are out there, who are flourishing and growing, and you're paying great attention to all the tactical issues on the state level, and this is very important stuff. So that's where our real hope is.
Yeah.
And if we, we're a we're an amazing power, and hopefully events will conspire to prevent the kind of attacks that might happen. But I do think people need to be aware of this possibility. So
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to say goodbye till next week.
till next week, Eric. It's been awesome talking to you as always.